Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of Nintendo slash gaming video, My 2 Cent Nintendo slash gaming video for the week, tongue twister right there, for October 16th to the 22nd, where I take a look at a couple of stories and give you my thoughts and my opinion on them. And I do want to talk about basically my thoughts on the demo, or the PS5 demo, of Star Ocean: The Defined Force, though. Capcom, Konami held their showcase for basically the Silent Hill showcase and the Resident Evil showcase, though. I also want to talk about the controversy surrounding Gotham Knight in terms of the frame rate, though, particularly at 30 frames per second. And last but not least, I want to talk about also the controversy that surrounded Bayonetta 3, and this had to do with the original voice actor and some of the comments she made, though. And if you're interested in where I got source of these informations, links will be in the description down below, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. But before we get started, I like to do what I like to call the quick My 2 Cent, stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details or anything like that. The first one is that apparently we now have the official rating for the upcoming Super Mario Brothers movie. As some of you may know, the teaser trailer is out there. It has certainly gotten the rating of rated PG and all, which in a way isn't hugely surprising. I thought it was going to be like a G-rated, though, but being PG, you know, I mean that's fine, though. I still think it looks like it's something that both, you know, young and older audiences are probably going to like, though. So I'm not bothered with the Super Mario Brothers movie getting the PG rated, though. We also learned that a new update for the Grand Theft Auto trilogy, the Definitive Edition, is currently out, not only for the Switch, but other systems as well, though. It's nice that they are updating this game, though, but that still does not excuse the fact that the game shipped in an extremely poor taste and basically at the bare minimum as possible. Not to mention rumors about the possibility that the backlash this game got pretty much put the brakes on anything like a Red Dead Redemption remastered to a Grand Theft Auto 4 remastered, to be exact, though. It's really a shame because these are considered classics and they should not have been handled this way or anything like that. So great that they're still updating it, but still no excuse for those games to launch in the pitiful state they were when they originally launched last year, though. We also learned that apparently somehow there has been an update to Disney's Dreamlight Valley, and it had to do with some people claiming that Mickey Mouse had some bizarre murderous eyes or something like that, though. I haven't played the game. I can only base it on what the screenshot shows, and from what I've seen, I'm not seeing it compared to the famous Luigi's Death Stare from the Mario Kart series and all that, so I'm not really seeing this in any way. So, but in either way, it is an update for those who are curious or those who are playing, you know, Disney's Dreamlight Valley or anything like that. We also learned that basically the Devil May Cry 5 has basically broken the 6 million mark in terms of sales. So certainly not bad, though. It's glad I did play Devil May Cry 5. I still enjoy that game, though. I'm hopeful that maybe we'll see a Devil May Cry 6. Who knows if that will happen or not, but either way, good for Capcom. They've been doing pretty good, and they've been on a roll so far, though. We also learned that a new, basically Mortal Kombat game is happening, but apparently it seems as though this is more of a RPG games for the mobile devices, which obviously means it's going to have, you know, those microtransactions, gotcha mechanics, more than likely, to be exact, though. So obviously not the announcement we like to hear and all. We also learned, based on a CMA filing in terms of Microsoft's trying to buy Activision Blizzard, is that apparently Xbox or Microsoft is trying to look for ways to basically compete against Apple and Google with their own store, to be exact, though. It'll be kind of interesting because we know Xbox is pushing that cloud approach really, really hard, though. And also, I do have to question some of the CMA's comments about basically how they feel about, you know, Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. Particularly, one, I don't agree with their comments about the Nintendo Switch, considering the fact that there are M-rated and violent games on the Nintendo Switch. It may not be like how it is with Call of Duty, but that doesn't mean they aren't there. And two, I still think that the fact that Sony's trying to block this gives the impression that they have no games on their system, or that they cannot survive without Call of Duty, yet Nintendo's doing fine without Call of Duty at this time. I may have mentioned this in the past, though, but I still question some of the CMA's comments in regards to this whole situation, though. We also learned that basically Harvestella is going to get improvements due to those who tried out the Switch demo, which is certainly nice, though. I played a little bit of that game, though, and I like what I'm seeing, though. It's not perfect. It's more like a mid-tier or, like a smaller title to be exact, though. But it does show some promise, though, to be exact, though. And it'll be interesting to see how this is compared to, say, the Rune Factory series, though. We also learned that basically the original Red Dead Redemption will no longer be playable on the PS5 or PS4. At the time, though, those who own either a PS5 and PS4, the only way to play that game is through, the streaming, how they're streaming PS3 games onto those systems, though. Which is, unfortunately, if this is true, this is very unfortunate, though, compared to how it is on the Xbox Series X and S, where I could basically purchase the game and basically play it natively, not have to stream it or anything like that. So it's it's very, very unfortunate how Red Dead Redemption is no longer, if assuming this is true, no longer playable on the PS5 or the PS4 at this time. We also learned that Cyberpunk Edgerunner anime, though, despite being a success, though, it doesn't seem to be that there are any plans for a second season and all, which to me, disappointed but not surprising, though, considering that this first season seems to be more just, I kind of agree, as just being a standalone part, though, which is really a shame because I would have loved to see more of Netflix and Trigger's Cyberpunk Edgerunner, though, because I really would love to have seen a second season, though. Maybe they could introduce a new character or something like that, but for now, it doesn't sound like we are getting a second season of Cyberpunk Edgerunner anytime soon. We also learned that the producer of Nier Automata threatened to leave, at least this is what we're hearing, threatened to leave Square Enix in order to get the game that he wanted to be made, though. And that's kind of interesting to see them really push for that, though, and apparently it has paid off, though, because Nier Automata has been very successful, though. It's a game that supposedly at the time helped save Platinum, to be exact, and recently it just made its way over to the Nintendo Switch. So yeah, I basically made that threat, and somehow in the end he was able to make the game and it became a success, though. We also learned that there have been reports that supposedly one studio is making a claim that many developers are struggling with the Xbox Series S requirement, though. And now we've heard this has gone back and forth between the Rockstar that has mentioned this, and I'll bring them up in part of my 2 cents, though. But to me, you can look at this in many ways. I mean, one, it could be that some studios are struggling with it. But at the same time, you can also look at it as basically some studios are just don't do a good job optimizing their games or anything like that. Since considering that the S is basically has the same architect as the Xbox Series X does. So it's interesting to see if we start hearing more and more developers speak out. And in the movie and TV show part of my 2 cents, though, there are 2 things we want to point out. First, supposedly Oscar Isaiah, if I'm saying his name correctly, came out in terms of comments about basically a second season of Moon Knight or anything like that. While nothing has been confirmed at this time, though, there does seem to indicate that there are certainly some ideas being floated around. Now, whether a second season happened or not remains to be seen. It's possible they could just be setting it up to bring Midnight Suns to Disney Plus, so there's always that possibility. But in either case, I would love to see another season of Moon Knight or a Midnight Sun. I enjoyed the first season, so I definitely am on board for another season if it does happen, though. And last but not least, though, apparently a sequel to the 1996 Twister movie is basically in the works right now, though. Now, I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to work. I mean, yes, there are so many ways they could screw it up, but then again, we saw how we went from Top Gun to Top Gun Maverick, and that turned out to did very well. So there are certainly ways that this movie could technically work. One of the plots that seems to be floating around is that it's basically the daughter of of the two main characters played by Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton has now caught into, the whole tornado fever, to basically tackling possibly the issue of climate change. So we'll have to wait and see how this all plans out, though. Hopefully someday we'll probably see the first teaser trailer and all. Okay, with the quick My 2 cent part now done, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with Bayonetta 3, particularly the controversy that kind of sprung up over this entire week. It had to do with the issue with the original voice actor and all that stuff. Now, a lot of people, especially those who are Switch owners like I am, are looking forward to picking up, Bayonetta 3, though. It was first originally announced back in 2017 during the video game awards, though. It sort of teased, and then there was some back and forth of whether the project had restarted, to some concerns that many people thought that the game was canceled. Until, I think, sometime last year, when the first trailer was shown of Bayonetta 3, though, it became clear that wasn't the case, and a lot of people are certainly Nintendo fans, particularly, have been looking forward to picking this one up, especially considering playing, the first Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2, and which those games got ported over to the Nintendo Switch and all. Well, recently, though, during this whole week, though, it seems to be one of the original voice actors basically said that she was basically will not be appearing in the game, has recently came out and talked about how she was basically, how she was sidelined by Platinum, that they gave her a lowball deal and all that. It basically put out a series of tweets that led to basically a call for her to call for a official boycott. Now, the tweet has been viewed the video, or supposedly has been viewed around 10 million times, though, or maybe more. And it opened up a huge Pandora box, ranging from Hideki Kamiya weighing in, talking about this, though, which he later got bombarded and supposedly shut his Twitter account down. Then he supposedly reports it back up again, to the new voice actor basically weighing in as well, basically pointing out to her that she does support in terms of the pay of it all, but isn't in the situation that the original voice actor is, because one of the big issues is that the original voice actor Bayonetta may have violated the NDA, and she openly admitted that and all, though. And then, of course, basically came through was with a report from Bloomberg by Jason Schreier that seemed to contradict a lot of the stuff that the original voice actor basically said, though. In an article from VGC, which collaborated some of the stuff that Bloomberg said, here's what the article reads. That quote, in a series of videos published on social media over the weekend, Taylor, who had been replaced as Bayonetta in the upcoming Switch sequel by veteran Jennifer Hale, criticized developer Platinum Games and called on fans to boycott Bayonetta 3. The actor claimed she eventually wrote to Platinum's vice president, who she claimed did not offer her more than what she called an immoral offer to reprise her role. Taylor's video has been viewed nearly 10 million times to date, and the actor received an outpouring of support from players as well as fellow voice actors who have long complained of being unpaid. This has led to an harassment towards Platinum's developers and the new Bayonetta actress Hale, who also chimed in on this. However, a source cited in a Bloomberg report that now disputes some of the claims made by the voice actor, many of which VGC can corroborate via its own source. According to people with knowledge of the situation, as well as documentation reviewed by both Bloomberg and VGC, Platinum intend to rehire Taylor last summer. It is claimed that Platinum sought to hire Taylor for at least 5 sessions. VGC source suggests it could have been as few as 4, with each paying $3,000 to $4,000 for 4 hours in the studio. This would have brought Taylor's total fee to $15,000. Bloomberg's report as VGC can collaborate via our own sources. One person with the knowledge of the deal claimed to VGC this represents a significant increase on Taylor's fee for the second game. According to Bloomberg, the voice actor responded by asking for a six-figure sum as well as residue or RESIDUALS on the game, and claimed Taylor strongly denied. VGC source echoed the residue, that word's claim, but did not mention the request sum. In a private message exchange with VGC, Taylor called the suggestion that she was offered more than $4,000 categorically untrue. She also labels claim by sources that she could have earned $15,000 as an absolute lie and complete joke. I quite like to put this in a rearview mirror and leave this whole bloody franchise behind, she told VGC. So I think I'll just let my video stand. I spoke the truth though. It talks about how since her message and all that stuff. It talks about and of course it talks about Jennifer Hales also responding on the controversy on Monday, saying, "Anyone who knows me or has followed my career will know that I have great respect for my peers, and that I am an advocate for all members of the community." She said, "I am under NDA and I'm not at liberty to speak regarding the situation. My reputation speaks for itself." So I do think that there's two sides of the coin that I see on this issue, to be exact. Do I think it does bring up the issue about how voice actors are being paid? Yes, I do think that it is an open debate about this though, and I do think that it's clear if they're being paid like very poorly compared to like a famous actor and all that who's being paid more though, I think that it does bring up some issues about the whole thing about voice actors being paid and all. So I do think it does bring up a very interesting debate. That being said though, I will say the original voice actor of Bayonetta did not handle the situation very well. And when we start hearing stuff like from Jason Schreier, who has a pretty good history with a lot of his reporting though, I mean, Anthem is a good example of that though. And the fact that she wants to put this all in the rearview mirror raises a lot of questions about her claim of the boycott and all. And if what the report is true though, then it's kind of contradicts a lot of the stuff that she said. And it kind of brings up the question, did a lot of people really jump the gun on this, to be exact? As for the boycott itself though, even without the report from Bloomberg or Jason Schreier or from Video Game Chronicles, I'm not really sure if this boycott would have worked or not. I mean, recently we're starting to hear reports that it may have actually helped Bayonetta 3, not hurt the game or anything like that, too. The thing is, I've seen these kind of boycotts before, and not all of them turn out to be well. I'm not saying some of them can't work. I mean, there have been cases where some of these boycotts do work. But I've seen cases where I think some of the Pokemon games, some people, I think one of them was they call for a boycott because you won't be able to use your Pokédex or anything like that, or because of the way the visuals of the game look, yet that didn't stop that game from selling very well to even, and some may or may not disagree with me on this, I saw a similar approach what happened with 2019's Captain Marvel, where some people on the internet were calling for a boycott because of comments made by Brie Larson over her comments about how some folks reviewed the movie A Wrinkle in Time, to even some pushing the whole Take the Anita challenge, or wanted Anita to make Captain Marvel bombed really bad. Yet despite that did not stop Captain Marvel from breaking the $1 billion mark, So I do question whether this boycott would have been effective or not, though. So it's a very bizarre situation, to be exact, how this all played out, though. So overall, I do agree that there is a debate about how voice actors are not only being treated, but how they are being paid. And I think it does raise some questions about that. But at the same time, the way the original voice actor handled this whole thing, calling for a boycott, she did not do a great job handling this situation. And if what this Bloomberg report from Jason Schreier says is true, it does give the impression that it really contradicted a lot of stuff that she said and all. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with Gotham Knights, and supposedly the fact that even being on the newest consoles, it's only going to run at 30 frames per second. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video for this week. And for this one, we're going to be talking about the situation surrounding Gotham Knights. Now, this is one of the big titles that WB Game is looking to push out, around the holidays and all that stuff, though. And the impression for the game has sort of been mixed at best, to be exact, though. There are some who don't like some of the visuals, not everyone's a fan of it being a co-op only experience, though. But the big one that kind of caught a lot of people's attention, though, was a recent comments made in regards of there not being a performance mode or anything like that, as the game will run at basically 30 frames per second on the consoles, on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. This also opened up a debate about basically the Series S supposedly being the weakest console, as that's some of the claim, though, although this got a developer somewhat not only being called out on some of the comments, but eventually led to this person deleting the tweet and their Twitter account altogether. Basically, what started out was in an article from IGN, and others have pointed out, this was spotted on Wario64 on Twitter about the news was shared about Gotham Knights from the executive producer of it. And this is what they had to say. Quote, "I know many of you are wondering about the availability of a performance mode for Gotham Knights on console." This person wrote, "Due to the type of features we have in our game, like providing a fully untethered co-op experience in our highly detailed open world, it's not as straightforward as lowering the resolution and getting a higher FPS. For this reason, our games do not have a performance and quality toggle option and will run at 30 FPS on consoles, though. This also has, meanwhile, the PC version supposedly will have the option to run at 60, but there's been reports that might be a bit more demanding or anything like that. Again, I'm not a PC gamer, so I don't know 100% sure if that's accurate or not. Well, this also followed up by a statement by a developer at Rocksteady, which is known for the Arkham series to be exact, that chimed in on the situation, even calling the Xbox Series S a potato while defending Gotham Knights at 30 frames per second, though. Basically, according to what the article, this is from WWF Tech, though, it says, quote, "However, fans' reaction nevertheless ranged from heavily disappointed to outright anger. After all, Gotham Knights was initially planned for previous generation consoles as well. They were recently becoming the next-gen exclusive, but apparently wasn't enough to warrant a performance mode on Xbox Series S and X and PS5. A fellow developer from Rocksteady, the ones from the Arkham series, though, a senior character technical artist, tried defending the Gotham Knights maker with a series of tweets that ended up inflaming the situation even further. He pointed out the Xbox Series S is not much better than the Xbox One and may be the culprit." This is what this person had said, quote, "I wish Garner understood what 60 FPS means in terms, or gamers, in terms of all things that they lose to make the game run fast, especially taking into account that we have a current gen console that's not much better than a last gen. Series S GPUs, mostly multi-platform games, always have to optimize for the lowest performance." In a follow-up message, he went as far as calling the Series S a potato that hamstrung the entire generations of games. The person wrote, quote, "The Series S exists, though, and Microsoft won't let you launch one without the other. An entire generation of games hamstrung by that potato, though." Needless to say, the person comments generated even stronger outrage. Not only did he have to delete the tweet, but also his entire Twitter account. Truth be told, this is far from the first developer commentedly openly critical of the Xbox Series S. The first one came from id Software, who was concerned about the dramatically lower amount of RAM and the split memory banks. A few months after its launch, Remedy said optimizing for the console was nowhere near as simple as lowering things like rendering resolution or text quality. A month before that, 4A Game CTO told us in an exclusive interview that the Xbox Series S RAM wasn't an issue, but the GPU performance will be a challenge for future titles. Earlier this year, Dying Light 2's lead designer stated that the Xbox Series S GPU was holding Techland back from going beyond 30 FPS in the game. Interestingly though, just a couple of months ago, Microsoft announced a selected software improvement that would enhance the performance of the Xbox Series S. Microsoft said, quote, hundreds of additional megabytes of memories are now available to the Xbox Series S developers. This gives developers more control over memory, which can improve graphics performance in memory-constrained conditions. Titles can now take better advantage of the recent memory enhance. We addressed an issue where graphics virtual address were being allocated considerably slower than non-graphics virtual address, though. The article concludes, it's unclear where WB Games Montreal could take advantage of these enhancements in time for the release of Gotham Knight. Perhaps the studio could add a performance mode in a future patch, or at least unlock the frame rate for those using with variable refresh rate VRR display, though. So, in terms of the whole 30 frames per second or anything like that, though, I will say that while I understand some folks would have liked to see, that push for like that 60 FPS on your console, though, whether it's a Series X or S or PS5, I don't blame them at all. I do think 60 frames per second is a better option. Don't get me wrong. I don't think 30 frames per second is necessarily bad, provided that it is a stable 30 FPS. So it's stable enough despite what is going on the screen, though. So I will admit 60 frames per second would have been better or anything like that to offer that graphical options. I mean, games like, say, Neo 1 and Neo 2 from Koei Tecmo had a graphical option, though. Even a game like Fire Emblem Warriors on the Nintendo Switch, even that had a graphical option where you could play the game at 1080p 30 frames per second or 720p at 60 frames per second, assuming you're putting your Switch in dock mode and all. So, I mean, yes, I will admit 60 frames per second is better. I don't dispute that, but to me, 30 frames per second isn't bad as long as it's a stable 30 frames per second. As for the Series S and everything like that, though, I'm not completely buying this argument, and I think the developers did not give a great response. I get it, sometimes fans or gamers can take things maybe a little too serious, I don't disagree, but sometimes developers don't help themselves when they give sort of like a middle finger response. And this was the kind of a middle finger response to the Xbox Series S, considering that the Xbox Series S is extremely popular and a lot of people enjoyed that system, considering at a time when people were having a hard time finding a Series X to be on store shelves and all that stuff. And the fact that we're also learning that Microsoft is going to be adding more, RAM to unlock and everything like that. To me, this just sounds like a case that the developers just don't really do a good job with optimizing their games or anything like that. I mean, yes, some developers do a good job, but others do not. And it's also worth pointing out that both the Series S and X, then the PS5, and even the Nintendo Switch for that matter, remember, they are closed boxes. They're not like an open box the way a PC is. So there is certainly difference between the two. So, yeah, I'm not sure it's the Series S's fault. Again, I'm no game developer, so I don't know 100%, but I just don't think that may be the case. And I think this is just an example of just the developers just not doing a great job optimizing their games very well. So overall, very odd situation with the frame rate, though. Yes, I will admit Gotham Knights would have been nice to see it running at 60 frames per second, though, but like I said, 30 frames per second isn't bad. It provides a stable 30 frames per second, though. And I'm not really buying some of the arguments about the Series S, though. To me, this just feels like they just don't do a good job optimizing their games for the systems in general, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3, and this one has to do with basically both Capcom and Konami hosting a showcase for, Konami for Silent Hill and Capcom for Resident Evil. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my Mind Choose... Oh, 3, I said 4 by mistake. 3 of my Mind Choose Sent video for this week. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at basically 2 showcases that happened this week. Both was the Resident Evil and Silent Hill showcase, though. Now, for both of these horror franchises, though, one has seen a resurgence and one maybe not as much up to this point, though. With Silent Hill, though, it has always been viewed as either an NFT or a Pinko machine, though, that Konami unfortunately has earned the negative reputation from, though. While Resident Evil, on the other hand, saw a major resurgence of it thanks to the success of 2017's Resident Evil 7, though, that sort of brought the franchise back from it being in a weak position when Resident Evil 6 came out, following with Operation Raccoon City and all, though. And so while I didn't get a chance to see the showcase, though, I did get a chance to read on some of the stuff that they showed off, and honestly, I would say some of these games I am definitely looking forward to, but there are some decisions, at least one on the Silent Hill side, that I'm not a big fan of, to be exact, though. In terms of we'll start off first with the Silent Hill one. According to an article from The Verge, it reads, supposedly, during today's or the recent showcase, which presented a live stream but ended up being 48 minutes long, we saw news of a remake of a new movie, an interactive live experience, some merch, and a brand new game, all within the Silent Hill universe. The first announcement came as a little surprise. Bloober Team, the studio that developed Layer of Fear and the most recent The Medium, is working on a Silent Hill 2 remake. No word yet on the release date, but it is notable that the game will be available exclusively on PS5 and PC for the first 12 months post-release, though. Supposedly it will be coming to the Xbox Series systems later, though. Later after this 12-month exclusivity. The Silent Hill 2 remake announcement was compounded by the news that Konami has once again teamed up with Christopher Gaines, director of Silent Hill 2006, to make a new movie based on Silent Hill 2. Though they also talked about basically the other stuff as well, like merchandise and all. They also mentioned about 2 new Silent Hill experience. Silent Hill Ascent seems like an interactive multiplayer visual novel-like game in which fans get to decide what happens and who lives and dies with no reset button, though. They said it sounds like Konami's managing to make it Until Dawn a multiplayer game or something. The second game, Silent Hill Townfall, but it's being developed in collaboration with No Code Studio and ANNAPURAN Interactive. They also said to close out the presentation, they got a short glimpse at a completely new Silent Hill game that's not a remake or a movie or an interactive choose-your-own-adventure thing. Silent Hill F seemingly takes place in Japan and therefore far away from the town and all. And the trailer ended featuring a gruesome, unsettling moment where a girl's flesh falls off her face. There are also disgusting moments in which spores like tentacles grow out of circular holes in discarded bodies before blooming into red spiders, lilies, though. So, scenes of these are certainly nice, though. The Silent Hill F thing, I am kind of curious to see more of that. I'm somewhat getting a little bit of a Fatal Frame vibe out of it to a certain degree based off the trailer, though. So we'll have to see how the game plays and what the mechanics are and how that one works. As for the remake of Silent Hill 2, certainly it's going to be interesting to see what Bloober Team does, though. Hopefully this port is handled well. I mean, we know there was a Silent Hill 2 or 3 HD remake that didn't go over very well with a lot of folks. That was basically poorly handled though. And from what I understand, the medium sort of got mixed response from a lot of folks. So we'll have to see how the Silent Hill 2 remake plays out. Also, one thing I'm not a big fan of is this time exclusivity approach. I'm not really a big fan of that kind of approach or anything. It's one thing if Sony wanted to 100% fully fund the game, though, like what Nintendo did with Bayonetta 2, but I'm not a huge fan of this time exclusivity or pay to keep this game off of that system at all. The other showcase we had was basically a Resident Evil showcase that Capcom showed off, though, and while there were certainly some announcements like the release date for Resident Evil 2 and 3 and 7 on the Nintendo Switch, it's worth pointing out those are basically the cloud version, and yeah, I'm not 100% sold on picking those up for the cloud version or anything like that, though, so I'm not really on board on that one. But anyway, in terms of what was shown off, they did show off a couple of things, though. They announced that basically some of the big announcements, and this is from GameSpot, it says that Resident Evil Village will have a DLC at a third-person camera mode. The third-person camera mode is coming to Resident Evil Village alongside with the game's upcoming DLC, which features Ethan Winter's daughter, which also features a brand new story and a new mercenary. The DLC is scheduled to launch on October 28th, so not that far behind, though. I am curious to see how the third-person mode is going to play out and all. They also announced that the demo for the third-person mode is now available. You can play the demo for a total of 60 minutes, though. And finally, the other thing that they showed off, I think the big one, was basically the Resident Evil 4 gameplay, though. The new gameplay for Resident Evil 4 showcased protagonist Leon first entering the Ganado village and focused on his first major encounter with the affected village. The encounter is as tense as it was in the original Resident Evil 4. Seeing Leon needed to board up doors and leap across rooftops to buy himself enough time to turn around and put a few shots into his pursuers, though. I've seen some of the gameplay of it, though, and it looks really neat, though. But I am kind of curious to see how they're going to approach this one, because when the original Resident Evil 4 came out back in 2005, that was more of an action focus, though. There were certainly puzzles, make no mistake, but nowhere near the classic Resident Evil, to be exact, though. So I'm curious if that action focus will still remain or not. But judging from what they showed with the Resident Evil 4 remake, though, it's definitely one I'm going to keep an eye on my radar, to be exact, though. I was a big fan of Resident Evil 4, still remains one of my favorite entries in the Resident Evil series. Although I do like the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake that they did. 2 a little bit more than 3, to be exact. I mean, the remake of 3 wasn't bad, but it was kind of disappointed at all. But still, nevertheless, though, I am looking forward to what Resident Evil 4, the remake of Resident Evil 4, see what changes they make to it this time around compared to what it was back in 2005. Unfortunately, one game that did not get the remake treatment, and I really think should, though, is there's a mention about basically whether or not Code Veronica, which is considered a fan favorite to some, will ever get that treatment. Sadly, according to an article from Noisy Pixel, which was translated by Video Game Chronicles, the producer has confirmed that Capcom currently has no plans to remake Resident Evil Code Veronica. Though they said this person added that while the opportunity for a Code Veronica remake hasn't been ruled out entirely, Capcom has no plans to bring this game that's set between Resident Evil 2 and 3 a new lease on life, though, which to me it's a little bit disappointing given the success that the Resident Evil remake, Resident Evil 2 and 3 did, and the hype for Resident Evil 4. I really think Code Veronica should get the remake treatment as those games, though. I think they should avoid some of the mistakes that they made with Resident Evil 3 remake, but I definitely think Code Veronica deserves that remake treatment, at least in my book, though. But overall, very impressive showcase, to be exact, based on what I read and based on what they showed off, though. I am intrigued about the Silent Hill one, particularly with Silent Hill F, though. But still, this is Konami, and Konami is known for making some pretty bad decisions. So I'm going to approach with some level of caution, to be exact. It's not that I want the Silent Hill 2 remake or Silent Hill F to fail. It's just I'm a little cautious with them and all. As for the Resident Evil Showcase, given how Capcom's been on a roll lately, I do have a bit more confidence on them with the Resident Evil games, to be exact though. And Resident Evil 4 definitely is high on my radar, and I'm looking forward to trying that one out when that comes out, I believe next year though, but still, it remains one of my favorite entries in the Resident Evil series, and I'm willing to see how this remake plays out and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part. And this one, I want to give my thoughts on based off the demo of Star Ocean: The Divine Force. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video. And for this one, I want to talk about my thoughts on the demo that I tried, the PS5 version of Star Ocean: The Divine Force. Now, Star Ocean obviously is not as big of a series as, say, like what the Final Fantasy series and all, but we've seen Square Enix lately basically, that's awesome, Square Enix basically focus on, you know, either reviving some titles like Trials of Mana to basically, you know, putting out smaller, like AA titles or smaller titles to be exact, with some success to be exact though. And so it's nice to see this one Star Ocean get another shot. The last entry, I think Integrity and Fairness, or Fateness, if I'm saying the name correctly, didn't get the best response from fans in the series. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Divine Force is basically handled. And based on my time with the game though, I do like what I'm seeing though, but it is far from perfect to be exact though. In terms of with the game though, you do have an option of both a quality or a performance mode though. I opted to stick with performance mode to have the game run at a 60 frames per second. And for the majority of the time though, the game has stuck to a 60 frames per second. However, there is one part based on my time with the demo though that I did run into where it turned out to be an area that was a bit more open than most of the other areas I've seen in Star Ocean: The Divine Force so far. And that's where I kind of saw the frame rate kind of dip a bit, maybe 30, possibly lower, and then sometimes goes up to 60 though. And that could be kind of an issue sometimes though, especially for a game that you have set in performance mode and all. Now granted, this is the demo though, so there is the possibility the final version might be different though, and that is a possibility, but still it is an annoying thing to see, especially for a game that offers a performance mode where in some areas the frame rate could like dip below, you know, like 60 frames per second though. As far as combat goes, combat's kind of feels like a mix between, on one hand, one part the Xenoblade Chronicles series and one part of Bandai Namco's Tales series though. In terms of that, you basically it is an RPG, but you basically can move your character around within a certain area though to attack the enemies and so forth. You can also basically escape depending on the situation, to be exact though. You do have certain moves that are assigned to certain buttons on your controller to be though and all, and you also have the ability to switch between different characters basically depending on like what enemy you're facing and all. You also will eventually get this device which can be used to basically, depending on the situation, you could lift your character up and go in for like a dive attack and all of that though. What's also interesting is that you could sneak up behind your enemies depending on the situation though. And if you do, you basically are able to, after you complete the battle though, basically earn extra experience points and all. Another thing to point out is that like Xenoblade Chronicles, you don't warp to like a battle area or anything like that like you do in Tales or any of like a traditional RPG like say a game like Octopath Traveler or the old Final Fantasy games to be exact. Everything is kind of like real time, somewhat like Xenoblade Chronicles was, somewhat like what Final Fantasy 15 was to a certain degree. You also have basically these AP points. So every time you use a move, it takes up basically those points though. And if you run out, you won't be able to attack or anything. You have to wait for it to refill and all. Depending on the situation, sometimes you will be basically have more AP points than you will, depending on what kind of enemies you're facing and all. You also have the ability to level up, ranging from like a skill tree to basically being able to upgrade, like, you know, your character's move, make them maybe a little bit more powerful and all. So there are certainly several options you could do, to be exact. You also have the ability to equip gear and all. As far as the visuals go, I would say, I mean, they're okay. Some people have complained that they are like PS3 like levels, and while I can see that to some degree, certainly do see that though, I'm not as bothered by that as much as, say, like the performance mode that I was with the game though, especially with how I mentioned in the open area. I seen like the frame rate kind of dip a little bit, to be exact though. So I'm not as bothered by it though. You do have the ability to sort of like move around a lot. You basically have the ability to like move around and all, especially when you get this one device that lets you, depending on how you angle it, you can scale certain like buildings or certain cliffs, being able to find hidden secrets in the game and so forth though. The voice acting, it's okay. It's not really anything special. It feels like some cliche you would see from certain animes and all that stuff. So I'm not as bothered by the voice acting as much. I can understand how some people can find it annoying though, but it's not. I would say it's tolerable, and I don't see really any major issue with it though. But I will say my time with the demo is, I mean, it's pretty good and all. I mean, I like some of these smaller RPGs and all, and I gotta give Square Enix credit for doing some of these smaller RPGs though. The performance mode, especially with that one open area where it kind of took a dip, that kind of bothers me a little bit. It didn't hinder my experience, but it was certainly annoying, and I do hope when the final version does come out though that this can be addressed when the game comes out. I believe it's either October 27th or 28th, so I'm not 100% sure on that. So overall, I would say my time with Star Ocean: The Divine Force is, I mean, it's pretty good though. I'm not the biggest Star Ocean fan though, but I did enjoy what I did see so far. I like the fact that Square Enix is doing some of these smaller titles, or these AA titles to be exact though. Again, I'm happy that there is a performance mode in the demo. Hopefully that will be in the final version, but I am a little worried about some areas where the performance mode could take a hit and the game could drop like below to 30 or even below. So that kind of worries me a little bit. So I'm really hopeful that they can address this issue before when the game finally comes out and all. And hopefully this game gets a better response than, say, the last Star Ocean does, because I wouldn't mind seeing Square Enix do not only more entries in the series, but I would like to see them continue to do some of these smaller or AA titles and all. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about this whole voice acting situation with Bayonetta 3 and all? Do you think that the original voice actor shot herself in the foot once this Bloomberg Jason Schreier report came out though? Do you think it does bring up a whole issue about the idea of how voice actors are being treated and paid in general? Are you still believing the boycott of Bayonetta 3, or do you think that's being blown way out of proportion? What are your thoughts about Gotham Knights being 30 FPS on PS5 and Xbox Series S and X though? Do you think it's ridiculous that it's 30 frames per second? Are you not bothered with it being at 30 frames per second? Do you think the developers raise a point about the Xbox Series S, or do you think some developers are blowing it way out of proportion and should do a better job optimizing their games? What are your thoughts about the Resident Evil showcase and the Silent Hill showcase though? Are you happy with what both Capcom and Konami showed? Do you think one is better than the other though? Are you looking forward to some of these games coming out though? And what are your thoughts about Star Ocean: The Divine Force, though. Do you agree with what I said about the demo? Do you disagree, though? Have you tried the demo out? Has it convinced you to pick up the game, or are you not 100% sold on Star Ocean the Divine Force? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!